A former convict leads a school and the union calls for his removal.
And another former convict begins a new ministry with a lot of support.
And an Olympic medalist goes home to cheers. The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report, starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
The Bahamas Union of Teachers is calling for the removal of a high school principal who was convicted of manslaughter years ago. Good evening, I'm Andrew Knowles.
And I'm LaDawn Davis. Thanks so much for joining us. It was reported in a newspaper that a North Andros principal was involved in a domestic dispute where his former girlfriend died.
Today, head of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, Belinda Wilson, is questioning how the principal, who was a former police officer, got back into public service.
Our Janelle Noel Ferguson reports.
An ex-con now serving as a government high school principal on a family island made headlines today. It's an issue that Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson confirmed to our news team. She says parents, PTA, and community residents expressed their concern when the principal served on another island.
And the disciplinarian sought to discipline some of the students, they would say to him, "No jailbird can discipline me. No ex-con." The other concerns we had is that there were persons in the community who served time simultaneously with Mr. Stephen Sands. And so the understanding from the persons in the community when I had the meeting with them was that they would pass and say, "Hey, cellmate."
A recommendation, she said, was also made by the union to have the principal transferred to New Providence to work in an office post.
How did he get back into the system is a pertinent question that I believe that someone needs to answer.
Meanwhile, Labor Minister Shane Gibson says the principal's file is currently on his desk for review. Some laws, he said, do not allow persons to hold certain positions.
It may not be in law, but you may consider that it's not in the best interest. So even though it's not written in law, you may say, well, it shouldn't happen even though it's not in law. Right. I mean, you could take a policy position.
Bahamas Public Service Union President John Pinder also weighing in.
We often ask our employers to expunge bad things from the records of our members after 2 years or so. And so even there's a law in the country that for certain offenses after 7 years is expunged from your record. So I believe if you already service 8 years and it's 30 years now, I think we need to let bygones be bygones.
Wilson says while she has no issue with ex-cons being rehabilitated into society, she wants to know who gave that principal a second chance.
And I hope that that person will be able to influence the powers that be to amend our laws so that some of our other young men who would have done less than what Mr. Sands would have done, so they can get a second chance.
Now, Education Minister, the Honorable Jerome Fitzgerald, said he'll comment on the matter before Cabinet meets tomorrow. Janelle Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
ZNS News reached out to the principal this morning, who said that he was disappointed with the article, but noted that he has served his time and that should not be held against him, adding that he has worked hard over the years to ensure his success and has done his best to help students to succeed. Two
American visitors opted to hand over more than $20,000 to the court or face jail time today. American visitors 57-year-old Richie Joseph Parati and his wife 57-year-old Karen Ann Parati of Scholar Hills Road, Londonville, New York, were accused of making a false declaration and failing to declare. It's alleged that the pair, while at pre-clearance at the Lyndon Pendling International Airport on Sunday, did not declare to authorities that they were carrying in excess of $10,000 in their possession, knowing that to be false. Instead, the pair actually had $23,224. The second charge alleged that while attempting to depart the Bahamas for the United States, failed to declare that they had $23,324 in their possession. The law requires that anyone traveling with an excess of $10,000 must declare it. The Paradas pleaded guilty with an explanation when they appeared before Magistrate Andrew Forbes. The pair claimed they did not know they had to make the declaration. Magistrate Forbes informed them that they would be free to go, but their funds would be seized. If not, they would likely face being convicted and a jail sentence. They opted to have the funds confiscated and were free to go. A clarion call from the head of the Bahamas Financial Services Union to employees of Royal Bank of Canada and Scotiabank to join the union to help preserve jobs.
The union leader says as both Canadian banks have threatened possible layoffs for months now, she is disappointed that Bahamian employees did not heed the initial call made about 2 months ago.
Pt.1 Knowles tells us tonight that while the union wants to go to bat for employees of both institutions, the union's leader wants government to make these commercial banks more accountable to the Bahamian people.
You could imagine a bank making 15 million profit in a quarter. Banks made profit. There was no crying. And, in fact, the cry was, bring us more.
And that we did, says Bahamas Financial Services Union President Teresa Mortimer, who has likened some commercial banks to crybabies that don't get their way.
This is your first term and not making the profit you're not used to making. And what do? You send the staff home, the staff who have been faithful to you, who when you said go get the money, they went and they made more profit for you.
And even as Mortimer is agitating for workers who she does not officially represent, the banks insist the cuts must be made. RBC Managing Director Nathaniel Benaby announced last week that the increased cost environment in the Bahamas led to the bank's decision, while Scotiabank has said that it is relocating some of its operations and functions to its Caribbean South Shared Services Hub based in Trinidad and Tobago. But Mortimer, who actually represents workers at CIBC First Caribbean International, says union representation could have helped to mitigate the blow to Scotiabank and RBC workers.
The first thing to do is to sit down and let's see how we could do this thing better than it's being done. To work all day and then come back to work at 4 o'clock and get a letter in your hand, that's not the way we do business. You don't treat people that way. That's inhumane.
She also pointed out that Scotiabank and Royal Bank employees in some other parts of the Caribbean aren't being affected because of union representation. And that said, she issued another appeal for financial services professionals industry-wide to get on board.
And the sad thing is this call would have gone out about 3 months ago. You can imagine what would have gone down in 3 months, what we could have done in 3 months. If people would only step up and realize that the problem is, I say, the persons in the financial sector need to realize that they are workers. Because somehow or another they forget they're workers. You know what I mean? Because I guess they service so much customers, they see themselves as the employer and not the employee. And that's where we go wrong. My heart goes out to them. I'm still willing to help. The union is here. Come and join the union. Let's see what we can do. And we'll work for you.
Pt.1 Knowles, ZNS Network News.
Some news from ZNS. Experienced broadcaster Mr. Stanley Pinder, Director of Radio, has been appointed to replace Byron Stubbs as Deputy General Manager of ZNS Northern Service with effect from April 22, 2014. Mr. Pinder will be assisted by Mr. Darren Meadows, who is being promoted from Deputy Director to the post of Director with responsibility for television technical production. Mr. Stubbs is retiring after 34 years of service to the corporation. The corporation commends him for his many years of unblemished service to broadcasting and to ZNS in particular as an outstanding radio announcer. In congratulating both Mr. Pinder and Mr. Meadows on their promotions, Executive Chairman Reverend Dr. William Thompson noted that the board and management are confident that together they will lead the ZNS charge in the Northern Bahamas and look forward to the continued success as the economy begins to expand. Mr. Pinder previously served in various capacities at the corporation, including engineering, television production, news, and more recently as Director of Radio.
A convicted sex offender installed as a church leader.
And an Olympic medalist goes home. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Lux Men's Warehouse.